Hello and welcome. This is NTA Tuesday Live and I'm Cyril Stober. Now, many advanced economies like that of Britain, the United States, are grown to a large extent on effective tax systems. This is to say the tax structure and machinery of collection is well organized to ensure an increase in revenue generation. Now, public analysts say it's far from the reality in developing countries like Nigeria. A good number of taxpayers in Nigeria are civil servants or workers whose taxes are deducted from source. A development many say calls for concern, especially with the decline in tax generation in a dwindling economy, where some state governments find it hard to pay salaries and execute developmental programs. Now, critics, however, blame this on weak tax system, evasion, and non-remittance of proceeds. But how true is this? What's in place to ensure effective tax system for Nigeria's industrialization drive? And how effective are the laws against tax evasion and other offenses? And when will the taxpayer get value for his or her money? These are some of the issues we'll be talking about tonight on NTA Tuesday Live. But first, let's get to see this report by Leah Katun Babatunde.
Revenue generation is no doubt the biggest present challenge of the Nigerian economy, owing to the steep fall in global oil prices, which is further exacerbated by the sole dependence on oil as the main revenue source. For many years until now, the Nigerian budget has been predicated on benchmark price of crude. In 2015, the Federal Inland Revenue Service (FIRS) had a target of 4.572 trillion naira but fell short in collection and garnered 3.743 trillion naira. It was due to significant fall in oil prices and the inability of the agency to meet the target of non-oil taxes, particularly value-added tax and company income tax. So, government through its tax agencies have embarked on an exercise to capture those who have failed in their tax-paying obligations to block loopholes and increase the revenue base of the nation. Already, additional 359,158 corporate taxpayers have been captured within 107 days between October 13, 2015 and January 27, 2016, and this figure is expected to rise by 500,000 in March.
I've also written to all the state governors to partner with us to make sure that the VAT that is due to be paid is paid monthly and timely. Withholding tax should be paid monthly and timely.
The challenge of revenue or paucity of revenue to the nation is not a challenge of Federal Inland Revenue Service alone. It is a challenge to the nation, and therefore the message must be taken to the last person in the society. So there is need for awareness creation, there is need for sensitization, there is need for publicity, so that Nigerians come to terms with the reality on ground.
Current tax coverage is less than 30% despite the huge potentials of the economy and available human and natural resources. Unguided tax waivers and incentives, multiple taxation, a massive informal sector, weak audit system, as well as the inability of Nigeria to align with the ECOWAS Protocol Agreement on VAT are some of the challenges that have impeded the effective implementation of the annual budgets in the country.
Aware of the ECOWAS Protocol, for example, we are expected to be at least at 10% of the value-added tax rate. But in this year, as you can see in the budget, it's still put at 5%. The essence is first to focus on the base. Let's see that we cover all the VATable areas, and in that way we'll be able to expand the base, increase the performance in value-added tax administration.
Government targets to increase the non-oil revenue through comprehensive audit and compliance to spending guidelines by government-owned enterprises, full implementation of the Treasury Single Account (TSA), as well as broadening the tax base and improving efficiency in tax revenue collection. The FIRS, through the Joint Tax Board, is also leveraging on technology tools to aid compliance by taxpayers and enable it monitor and capture all taxable transactions.
Because when you have manual receipts littered everywhere, people go to print, how are you sure? But then if we go to a level where even payee are deducted and there is a software that whenever salaries are paid, the pay aspect is simply moved to the revenue account, then we can be sure to beat our chest that we are giving monies to government.
First of all, the 13-page form to register for TIN has been reduced to 1 page. We had 133 fields to fill out. We reduced that to 13. So with the 1-page form, 13 fields filled out, you can register for payment of tax.
These and other reforms in the nation's financial system will shape the outlook of the economy this year through the budget, which is currently being defended at the National Assembly. In Abuja, Leah Babatunde, NTA News.
All right, that report sets the tone for tonight's discussion. We start off by introducing our guest to you. We'd like to welcome to this program Mr. William Babatunde Fowler, who's chairman of the Federal Inland Revenue Service, FIRS. Thanks for being here.
Thank you very much.
We're also joined tonight by Dr. Teju Shomori, who is the president, Chartered Institute of Taxation. Thanks for being here.
Thank you.
Also here tonight is the Honorable Austin Chukwukere, who is the deputy chairman of the House of Representatives Committee on Finance. Honorable, thanks for being here.
Thank you, sir.
And joining us from our Kaduna studio is Professor Seth Akosin of the Department of Economics, Kaduna State University. Thanks for being with us tonight.
Very much.
And also joining us this time from our Lagos studio is Chief Mark Anthony Dike, immediate past president of the Chartered Institute of Taxation. Thanks for being with us tonight.
Thank you very much. It's my pleasure to be here.
All right, let's go ahead and acquaint you with the process, as we always do every Tuesday. At the appropriate time, you can get to join in the discussion in the studio. The various platforms will be on your screen. You can take advantage of that. Let me quickly say, for those who will be phoning in, if you do get through at the appropriate time, do us a favor, turn down the volume of your TV set. That's the way to avoid the hurlback or the echo. We'd also like to encourage those who will be phoning in to just go straight to the point, and so we can have more people joining the discussion in the studio. Once again, welcome to NTA Tuesday Live. Let's begin by looking at where we are in terms of revenue from tax. Just how much are we generating from taxation in Nigeria today? And let's turn to the chairman of the Federal Inland Revenue Service. Where are we today?
Well, if you look at the performance for last year, 2015, we did about 3.7 trillion in total. And that was a bit below budget. It was about 80% of the budget for 2015. We, however, believe that with the measures we put in place, we should be able to do at least 90% of the proposed budget for 2016.
Ordinarily, what would you have expected to rake in?
Well, we have given ourselves an internal target of 4.9 trillion. That's subject to the approval of the budget to be passed by the House. And if the House decides that the budget for revenue is lower and we get a higher level of revenue, I guess that's best for the country also. All
right. Well, the Deputy Chairman of the House Committee on Finances here, you've just heard about how we have performed, not up to speed really, and you're going to have to be dealing with the budget, and with all prices dwindling, what do you see finances in terms of revenue derived from tax?
Well, I think it's time we begin to address our minds towards moving away from a monolithic economic earnings into diversifications such as taxations. In other climes, most of the revenues that accrue to government mainly from taxation and taxes. And in the past, it's become issues that Nigerians don't pay tax, yet they want everything done for them. So there is every need for Nigerians to begin to key into the issue of tuning their minds towards paying taxes, towards making the government have revenues to be able to attend its programs and policies. Therefore, we are happy somehow that things are the way they are, because otherwise we wouldn't have known that we can generate the funds and revenue that we should be able to generate. And thank God this year, given the way the budget has been structured, that most of the revenue that is going to finance the budget is coming from revenues from taxation and other revenues that are not oil-based.
Okay, thank you. Well, I suppose we'll just put the question direct to Dr. Shumari. Double-ended, really. First, why don't we pay tax, and why don't we collect tax?
These are two questions.
Yes.
Why don't we pay tax, and why don't we collect tax? We may not pay tax for quite a number of reasons. But first of all, let us try and identify that we have different categories of taxpayers. Let me say category A are the taxpayers that will pay tax readily. Without any effort from the tax authorities, they will pay. They regard it as their civic duties in accordance with Section 24F of the Constitution, which says that every citizen must declare their income correctly to the appropriate authorities, and they should pay as when due. So you have some class of taxpayers like that. They would pay without any compulsion. There are some taxpayers, they will pay, but they will tell you, tax office, I can't pay, at once. Let me stagger the payments. That's another class of taxpayers. They are also willing to pay. There's another class of taxpayers that no matter what you do, they will tell you that, what has government done for me? I seek my borehole, I provide my light, my generator, security, all those things that government is supposed to provide. Because the purpose of taxation is that for government to be able to provide these services. And don't forget that collection of tax started in UK under William Pitt in 1799, when under the Napoleonic War, they needed funds. That was how tax came into being. And since then, so many countries have been using this method to collect tax. Now, when you collect tax from your citizens, you have a duty to render to those citizens. You collect their money to provide services for them. So I can say that some taxpayers, they don't pay tax because they believe government has failed them. Government has not provided what government is supposed to provide. Another category may be that some don't have enough knowledge about taxation. We may just assume that the education is everywhere, tax education is everywhere, but it's possible that there are some few people that do not understand the issue of tax. Recently, a lot of people have asked me that on the question of taxpayer identification number, some people don't still understand TIN. Some people still ask government or the banks, they are asking us they are giving us BVN. We have BVN. Why are we having TIN again? Some say we already have TIN. Why are we having BVN again? So we need to do a lot of sensitization to our citizens to know the benefits of tax, so that the taxpayers, the citizens, they will do their own bit, while government will do its own bit. And the tax authorities, the third leg, because I see it as a system: taxpayer, government, and the tax authorities. There should be a synergy among those three bodies. So okay. I think I've been able to answer those two questions.
We'll come to particularly the issue of collection of the taxes, and what makes it so difficult for us to collect the taxes, even where you have people who are willing to pay their taxes. But we'll come to that. But let's go to Kaduna and talk to Professor Seth Akusen. And the same issues we're talking about. We have not been able to generate that much from taxation. And again, there's still a large number of people who resist taxation. And it's been said all the time that perhaps the quickest and most compliant people are civil servants who actually have no choice in the matter. The tax is deducted from source. But there is also that aspect of non-remittance. So I'd like you to start on that premise.
Okay, thank you very much for that. But most of the discussions on the issue of tax has always been one-sided. from the angle of tax economies, there are two sides. One is the demand side, and the second is the supply side. I think most of the discussion we've been having in the past, and even in this platform, we've always had people talking about the demand side. Government asking people to pay tax, why are people not paying tax, and all that. Neglecting the supply angle to taxation. That is, looking at the tax base itself. We need to look at the environment. We need to look at the hardship that is being inflicted on people during the course of tax collection. We also look at the challenges that people are facing in paying tax, the environment to which they operate, the infrastructural deficit, and so on and so forth. So if we keep on concentrating on the demand side of tax collection, we will continue to have challenges. Of course, government collect tax from two angles, that is, from income as well as from consumption. And so if government collects taxes from people from both sides, when you earn income, they collect tax, and when you spend the income again, they collect tax. So most of the time, we begin to have these challenges in terms of administration of taxes and also double taxation and what have you. So the issue is not just a matter of collection. And apart from that, if you look at the other angle of demand side, there are also issues that need to be addressed. The tax yield, that is the difference between what is earned as tax and the cost of collection. So if the federal revenue we've had just now, that they are earning, about 3-point-something trillion, or now a target of 4.9 trillion, how much will it cost us to collect those taxes? And how much will be the net that will be given to government? And so these are the challenges whereby you find out that within the last 2-3 years, tax collection compared with the budget, sometimes, the last year or the year before last, we have tax collection about 80-something to 90% of the budget. But where is the tax being reflected in terms of the budget? And another challenge that we need to look at is the ratio of the tax collected to the GDP. We have a GDP of about 500 billion USD. And then compare with the second largest economy in Africa, South Africa, you see the tax ratio. What we earn as tax compared to what the economy of the nation in terms of GDP is far below. So what we are saying is that emphasis should now be on the angle of supply, where the tax is coming from. What is happening there? What will government do to improve taxation? Because there is a limit to which you continue to increase the tax rate, it will affect even the base itself. Good enough, in the 2016 budget, the government has said that they are not going to increase the tax, despite the clamor by the Federal Revenue and other agencies of government that it should be jacked up to 10%. And so when you jack up, even the tax itself, there is a limit to which you can continue to get those amounts from people. Because the tax has an elastic limit to which that you have a backward bending tax elasticity, to the extent that as you increase the tax rate, the income that will be generated will begin to decline. And so these are the angle that I want in this area to focus the discussion on the supply side. And if the Federal Revenue and the Ministry of Finance and all the relevant agencies of government that are involved in issue of taxation and tax collection can now focus their research and their thinking on the supply angle, will not be facing the kind of challenges we are facing today. And I think this is the area that has been missing, the missing link in our administration of taxes in Nigeria.
All right, thank you very much, Prof. And we'll just go over to our Lagos Center and let's bring on Chief Mark Anthony Dike, who's the immediate past president of the Chartered Institute of Taxation. And you heard the professor talk about much attention going to the demand side and not much attention to the supply angle. And of course, raising questions about what the tax base is. Let's look at it from that angle. What is the tax base really of this country?
Thank you very much indeed. When you're talking about tax base, you're essentially talking about what is the income or profit that is available to the individual after taking account of basic needs. To put it very very simply, for somebody who is in employment, you talk about what is his disposable income, what income he has to be able to take care of food, housing, clothing, pay the children's school fees, especially when education is not free, take care of health conditions of the family. And then if you take these things into account, then of course you'll be getting a clear picture of what for somebody who is in employment, what income is all about. But there is even a bigger challenge when we're talking about income. For somebody who is in employment and for somebody who is in business, what is income? For somebody who is in business, of course, the expenses of business are deductible before you talk about the profit he or she has made. And then at that point in time, you can now say, okay, the person who is in business and the person who is in employment now come to the same particular level. But the person who has earned his income from employment, there are costs. There are implicit costs for earning that income, which unfortunately may not be quantified. His intellectual capacity, intellectual property. United States Supreme Court tried to get a handle on this about a century ago, that it is still very difficult to get to grips to what is income. And that's why before the recent reform in 2011, we will now have what they call a clean wage approach to tax allowance for individuals. You used to talk about wife allowance, or later spouse allowance, children allowance, dependent relative allowance, widows of orphans and pensions scheme, which don't even amount to much. Now it went down by what they call a clean wage approach, which actually should take care of what should be necessary inputted cost for an individual in earning his income. So is therefore a critical issue, especially like Professor has said, in a situation where there is high level of inflation. Now, with the exchange rates to dollar going down, every cost of things, even things that businesses bought before the depreciation in the exchange rate. Everybody now has to factor it because you're talking about replacement costs. If you sell your old stock, you are going to buy new stock at the new price, and so you sell your old stock at the current price rather than at the old price that you got it. So they will have a big issue there. So yes, there is a depression in the economy, and I'm having serious doubts how we can move this drive this process of enhancing revenue collection. That is not counseling the fact that a lot of people are not tax compliant, but there is a lot of pressure in the economy on individuals. Costs are going up very, very astronomically. People are, the same income has not increased for individuals, but cost of living is going up astronomically. And therefore, that's a big issue that we need to be looking at.
The chairman of the FIRS here, you've heard the various positions here, particularly the issue of the tax base, the challenges on the economy, and asking to rake in more in terms of tax. And clearly, Chibdike doesn't think it's doable to a large extent, given the pressures on the economy right now. But let's look at the base, the tax base of the country.
Well, we can look at it from another perspective. Like we said, in the last 107 days, we've added over 359,000 new corporate accounts that had never paid any taxes. They're not paid any CIT, they're not paid any VAT. And certainly, if you add the amount of money that they should have paid to government, it will be quite substantial. The other aspect is that when government does receive this revenue, Government provides services. Government gives out contracts, which creates more employment locally. And in doing that, you get more people who are engaged, who earn an income. You get organizations who make a profit. And they also equally pay taxes on their income and their profits. So it's like a cycle. And as the economy gets better, the level of taxes also increases. So you have to start somewhere. The situation of what comes first, the chicken or the egg. If we are talking about law, whether government provides services or not, you are obliged by law to pay taxes. And with the government that we have in place, they have definite plans. They have a vision that I think all of us have keyed into. So it's now left for us who earn an income, for the organizations who have chosen Nigeria as a place to do business, who are making a profit, to do the right thing and support government. And in supporting government, I believe they're supporting all Nigerians by paying their taxes.
Sometimes I wonder when you talk about your projections, and I'm wondering what those projections are based on, the data that you use to project, because quite a lot of activities are going on in the non-formal sector, and you hardly have a database that you can refer to and say this is a reasonable number of those who earn an income. How do you get to that?
Okay, in terms of projections, I was at a discussion with the chairman of the SMEs, and he said that they had 37.5 million members who are involved in informal small-scale businesses. And as the chairman of the Joint Tax Board, I can tell you today, in terms of the individuals on the database, they're less than 10 million. So if in one sector of the economy, you've got 37 million individuals, and nationwide, we have 10 million on the tax database. That clearly tells me that there are over 27 million people who are engaged in small-scale businesses that are equally not paying taxes. Now, tax is based on profit or income. If we even assume that 20% of them are not making any profits, or they're making very minor income, the other members who are involved in one trade or the other certainly should be paying their taxes to government. So in terms of what we base our figures on, they're basically figures that we can substantiate. Now, in terms of the actual Naira amount based on profit is the question. Some organizations may have a drop in profit because of the oil price. Some may have a drop in profit because of this disposable income within the economy. But certainly, a number of companies will continue to generate and make profits and continue to employ people who earn an income who should be paying taxes.
Okay, but you do expect that in times like this, you would have a drop in profits and income, Dr. Shumari. Of course, I'm looking at where quite a large chunk of those you expecting would say, well, these are lean times and profits are down, income is down.
Yes, but see, when you expand the tax base, with the new people coming in who hadn't been in the tax base before, even with lower profits and lower income, but an increased number, you'll find out that it will make up for the shortfall. We have a target of signing on at least 500,000 new property accounts before March 31st. We're already more than halfway there. We have 359,000. And I can assure you within the next 1 month, we'll find at least another 140,000 to make that 500,000.
All right. Dr. Shumari.
Yeah. The important thing is to identify that taxpayer. If you don't identify that taxpayer, you may never be able to collect that tax. So identification of taxpayer is very key. And just as the chairman, executive chairman of FRS said, he said in recent times, in the last 107 days, they've been able to identify additional maybe 350,000 and so on. Then there's also plan from FRS that I learned that they still have a program to identify additional, taxpayers. So although you said that it's possible that there may be drop in taxes payable by some taxpayers. If you have some drop somewhere and you are able to identify some additional taxpayers, those that you just identify, they too, they will pay tax. Because there are some people out there that are hiding, or some are hiding, you don't even know they are there until they are discovered. Then the informal sector, you may be looking at the informal sector, what do they sell, that their business. There was a time I read in the papers, somebody, a beggar, the man said he makes 5,000 naira a day. 5,000 naira a day is roughly 150,000. How many people collect 150,000 naira a day? So that is still an income. So there's some undetected income, which the tax authorities all over the country, they still have to identify them. Then there are some taxpayers that are not paying the correct tax. So by the time you put some strategies in place, just as the ones that the FRS have put in place, like nationwide audit, VAT identification, VAT exercise, sending their inspectors to go to some companies, bring out your books, they look at their books. By the time you end this type of exercises, you would, it will be alarming, the additional taxes that we generate from that exercise alone. So this type of exercise, they are very important. So the issue of widening the tax base is very key, because there are still some incomes that are out there that the tax authorities are yet to tap. So you have to look at that, tap those ones, widen the tax base. Then the issue of training is also very key for the tax authorities all over the country. They need the training, how to assess, because assessment is very key in the tax matters. If you don't assess, you cannot collect, not to talk of accounting, because those are the three main issues in taxation. You identify that taxpayer, haven't identified the taxpayer, you assess that taxpayer, and now it is a self-assessment, which was introduced in 1991. It's a good method. So on the self-assessment, the taxpayer will come forward and say, this is how much I'm supposed to pay. But that does not stop the taxman from examining what you said you are supposed to pay.
You're counting on integrity here. That
you count on integrity on the issue of self-assessment. But you know, the beauty about self-assessment is that the taxpayer is made to sign. You have to sign for that figure. It's not government assessment. It's not the government that is saying, go and pay this, go and pay X naira. You are the one, you sat down in your office or in your home, you decided that this is how much you want to pay. But that doesn't stop, the tax authorities. They will still examine those assessments and come up with additional assessment, because in taxation there's something that we call add back. There are some expenses that are not allowed for tax purposes. They are not tax deductible. So those expenses that are not tax deductible, or maybe some are, they may be privately allowed. Privately, if they are private expenses, they will not be allowed for tax purposes. But it's a taxman that will determine which one is private, which one is not private.
All right, so undetected incomes are all over the place. Honorable, how do you begin to get all that? Because it's obvious from what all our guests have said tonight, there's still a lot out there that you need to tap and bring in.
Well, I'm not the expert here, but then while going about identifying the taxpayers and expanding the base, I think there is need for a lot of education. Nigerians need to be educated on the need and the importance and the usefulness of tax and what they stand to benefit. And the information need to go out there, otherwise it will be difficult for you to convince anybody who has not been well tutored and well educated on the need for him to spend that extra money paying tax to be able to pay it. So I think we still need to explore that angle, appealing to people. Though there is a law, it is a law that every earning has to be taxed on. And while applying that law, we still need to educate people and appeal to the consciences of Nigerians to be able to come to terms with this idea of paying taxes and increasing our revenue base.
Okay, Prof, from our Kaduna Center, this was something I had noted down, I would raise. You think there's an issue here of, let's say you're projecting 4.9 trillion. you think there's an issue here about how much will it cost to collect that? In other words, if you look at what it would cost you to collect, at what point does it make sense, or does it no longer justify what you're projecting?
Yes, Cyril, I think this is what we've been talking about, that the federal land revenue may go a bit further by bringing incentives in their tax administration and management. The fact that you want to increase the tax base does not mean that it should be like a tax police, where you go about fishing out people who have not been paying tax and all that. I think we can go a bit further by introducing some form of tax incentives to attract people to willingly come and pay their taxes, even when they are operating in the informal sector, or they are operating, in the rural areas or whatever. In some places, you find out that the Inland Revenue Service may introduce some form of award, some form of ceremony, or one thing or the other, some incentive, a sort of. I'm very much aware that in the Federal Ministry of Industry, Trade and Investment, as well as the Investment Promotion Council, Nigeria Investment Promotion Council, has developed some kind of incentives platform that can be leveraged when it comes to collection of taxes, levies, and rates in the country. And so when those documents are dusted up and we begin to work on them, then we get that. Not only that, if we have projection, as is being said by the chairman of the Federal Revenue Service, of about 4.9 trillion, almost 5 trillion, that means we just need about 1 trillion naira to finance the 6 trillion budget for the 6 trillion budget or whatever the government has projected and all that. But if you look at the ratio of the cost of collection and then the tax base, then compare with the yield at the end of the day, that is the net, you find out that at the end of the day, the cost of collection these taxes is very high. Sometimes, if you look at the trend within the last 3, 4, 5 years, you see that it's as high as 40, 50, sometimes 60%. So sometimes we begin to wonder what is happening in the process of tax collection, what is happening to our net revenue. And that is why you see that within the last 5 years, the federal revenue has been collecting huge amount of taxes, but at the end of the day, what is remitted or what is incorporated into the tax revenue for the federal government and others to be shared among the state is far, below what is expected. So I think we should begin to work on the cost effectiveness of collecting those taxes by the Federal Land Revenue and any other agency like the custom and the rest of them that are collecting some of those taxes. And so these are the areas that I think we can look at. And that is why I mentioned that we should not just be concentrating on the demand angle. We can also look at the supply side. Let's look at, because the essence of taxation is for welfare of the people. So when the process of collecting tax is beginning to impact on the welfare of people and there are welfare losses, then the essence is being defeated. And so that is why our work should not be centered on policing people, paying tax and all that. Well, that we can be doing that from the demand side, but we should also be just and be fair to the angle of the supply side from those who are paying these taxes, the individual, the corporation. As I said earlier, you collect tax from the income. When people earn income, you collect tax when they are spending. That means you are collecting tax from the left-hand side, collecting again from the right-hand side. So if that is happening, we should be in position to be a kind of empathetic to people who are in that position, who are paying the tax. So where we are going, we agree with the concept that, look, let's increase the tax base so that the people who are paying this tax will be higher in number, and then we collect more tax. And then what about the organization, the companies, the SMEs? The central bank, the SMEDEN, and the rest of them can begin to work out how to look at the challenges that the SME are facing so that you improve, you have more startups, because the tax regulation, the tax administration is impacting negatively on small-scale industries. And as a result, you don't get them to pay more taxes. How much tax are you going to be getting from individuals? So if you increase, you say, well, we have 37 million SMEs in Nigeria and only 10 million are paying, then the remaining 27 million we begin to look at the challenges they are facing, the difficulty they are facing. Government should set up a committee to look at that angle so that as the federal revenue is working from the demand side, there is another group working from the supply side to boost the economy of the nation, to boost the taxation base, so that at the end of the day, we are all the better for it. That is my take on that.
Well, Mr. Fowler, you didn't seem to agree with the figures regarding the cost of collection.
Definitely. Let me just put it right. For the Federal Inland Revenue Service, there's a law which says we're entitled to 4% of the revenue generated. Now, even with that in place, we do intend to see if we can collect more revenue at a lower rate. We are putting up an efficiency unit. The Honorable Minister for Finance had said she's also put that unit in her office to check the level of efficiency within government. We're also following steps and putting that in FIRS, so that at the end of the year, we might be able to even reduce the cost of collection to maybe even 3%. And I believe that right now at 4%, it is considered okay, not too high. And like I said, if we can even perform those duties at less than 4%, we will do that.
Dr. Shubari.
Yes, on the issue of the cost of collection, one of the canons of taxation enunciated by Adam Smith, 1776, in his book Wealth of Nations, was that he gave 4 canons of taxation, one of which is a canon of economy. That is, the amount that you use to collect taxation, to collect tax, should not even be close, not to talk of being higher than the tax that you are supposed to generate. That is, if you spend 100 million as cost of collection to collect the taxes, the tax that you will collect should be far above that 100 million. Now, coming to FRS in 2007, after the reforms of 2002 under Professor Dr. Phillips, so many things were approved for FRS because FRS became autonomous, not only administrative autonomy, but financial autonomy as well. And that gave back, the outcome of that reform was the establishment of the Federal Revenue Service Establishment Act 2007. The cost of collection given to FRS has the backing of the law. It is in the section, it is in the Federal Inland Revenue Service Establishment Act. And it is 4% of collection of non-oil taxes. So that issue of collection, I don't agree with Prof. that is on the high side that are spending up to 40%. No, the figures are there, they can be verified, year in, year out.
All right, the issue of the cost of collection started off with you, Chief Mark Anthony Dike. So we'll return it to you now. We've heard 2 sides now. So where do you stand here?
Technical point of view, the cost of collection should be as low as 1% of the tax collected, if it is feasible. One other correction I need to make: the 4% for FIRS is on non-oil tax collection. The oil tax does not form the base for the cost of collection. There is no cost of collection for oil tax. It's only on non-oil that the 4% is based on for FIRS. I think I need to make that clarification, having been within FIRS for many years. And therefore, it is important, going a little bit beyond, talking about minimizing cost of collection as much as possible. There's certain things that are, the difficult to tax segments of the society, particularly the informal sector, which from the bulk, it's not only in Nigeria, even in the United States, even in Australia, the informal sector, the SMEs form as much as 95% of the total tax population. But I'll be able to manage it. The concept of tax gap, the US has as much as 3%. Sometimes, it may be up to 4%. What is collectible and what is collected. And so it is important that we minimize the costs of collecting revenue. Otherwise, then the efficiency will be lost. coming back to the informal sector, part of the problem we have in Nigeria is lack of record keeping. A lot of people, even those who are educated, don't even keep or don't care to keep records. But comparatively, a country like Ethiopia is one of the countries that is being signposted as one that has, a culture of record keeping, even within the informal sector. In the course of my engagements, international conferences, it's one country that is being signposted. All these artisans, they are forced to keep some kind of records. And that's an area where I think if we have to, given that the bulk of our taxpayers are within the informal category, we need to be able to invest some resources. It may not be much in helping these people through their trade groups to keep some minimal records. At the onset of VAT in 1993, some people proposed that, but that was not accepted. But I think the time is becoming very ripe that we need to invest more resources within, in that particular area, because without records, you cannot even determine or quantify the income any particular business person is earning, beyond those who are in paid employment. It's not only those who are in the civil service, those who are also in the private sector, especially the organized private sector, they also pay tax. But of course, because of issue about the quid pro quo, you pay tax and you expect to receive something in return. What is the benefit? Because if you don't answer that question positively, you will not convince yourself that that you should pay tax. So it is important that governments should strive to pay tax, to apply the tax revenue appropriately. And if there are certain difficulties for particular segments that is impeding their tax compliance level, government should address it. You have poor roads in the market, it's full of squalor, no passable road to that market, and still expect the businesses that are there to pay tax. No access road, no good health facilities. If these things are addressed through the market associations, then of course we'll start getting to grips with improvements in tax compliance in Nigeria.
Okay, well, Honorable, in your opening comments, you said Nigerians love good things, but they don't want to pay tax on them. And it brings us to the question of consumption tax. How feasible is that in this part of the world?
Well, consumption tax is feasible here. The issues are how do we apply the collection and the feasibility of even identifying what should be taxed for consumption. Already value-added tax is something close to that, and it's taking care of some luxury, in quote, items that should be taxed. I heard when the prof is saying you tax on income, then you tax on consumption. I don't think it's all consumable items that are taxed with reference to value-added tax. So we should be able to identify those areas that we should tax consumable items that is not going to also impinge on the general masses who are suffering to pay even on their small earnings.
There was the argument over the value-added tax, and I think Prof alluded to it a short while ago, and the resistance to proposals to raise value-added tax. Let's get the true position of that, especially with the issue of consumption tax and luxury goods that he talked about. Identifying these first from the inland revenue.
Well, basically, based on what Honorable was talking about, there are certain items that are not subject to VAT, and those items can be considered as items that are required for everyone. Medical care.
That people who have more than 3 cars, so that we could even save the country from pollution.
Well, that's a very good statement.
And the other tweet here says, taxation is not the solution. It is about proper management. And so, how well are we managing tax administration?
Well, if we're talking about the managing tax administration, there is room for improvement. But let me first of all try and give further explanations. Apart from the Federal Inland Revenue Service, every state government has a revenue board, which has its own level of independence to generate revenue through taxes. And I believe that as members of the Joint Tax Board, we meet every quarter and we look at our weaknesses as revenue collection agencies and try and make sure that we improve. So when people talk about the level of efficiency of the tax collection machinery, it might be at the state level or the federal level or even the local government level.
Okay. Well, the lines are open and we have a first caller from Benin. Emmanuel is calling in from Benin. Emmanuel, good evening.
Hello.
Hello, Emmanuel. Good evening.
Okay.
Yeah.
Good evening, everybody.
Yes, good evening.
Chairman FRS, Madam from the ITN, and my honorable from the Federal National Assembly. My contribution will be more or less directed to the professor from Kaduna with all due respect. I think what we need in this nation is enough sensitization and enough tax education. Like somebody with the status of the professor, making some statements which obviously are erroneous. It shows the level of ignorance per se, with all due respect, sir. It shows the level of ignorance in the system. Tax is statutory. The laws are straightforward, and it's expected for everyone to pay their taxes. And if everyone would cooperate with the government and the respective tax authorities, both at the federal and the state level, I believe that the hue and cry about taxation in the country will be less. If we can take the extra pains to educate ourselves on the various provisions of the tax law, I think we'll be better informed to educate ourselves and as well educate the entire citizenry on the benefits of paying taxes. Most people that resist payment of taxes tend to be the elite. The common man in the street, the low-income earners, they pay their taxes. The civil servants pay their taxes without complaining, it's deducted from source.
Well, they have no choice.
But those that earn high income yearly, even some lawyers who are supposed to be versed in the law, resist the payment.
The struggle for independence had been a long and tough one. Our founding fathers and compatriots sacrificed their comfort and even shed their blood. We cannot at this point in history afford to spirit away their sacrifices for immediate but temporary gains of today. Let us emphasize what unites and not what divides us. Working for the unity of purpose with a stronger vision for a better tomorrow. NTA, growing with the nation.
Together, no matter where you come from, no matter your religion, we are one. Let's live together. Let's stop fighting each other. Let us live as one. It doesn't matter where you come from, your tribe or religion, man, woman or child. It doesn't matter who you are. Put Nigeria first. No matter where you come from, no matter your religion, we are one. Let's live together.
How can we develop when we're always in crisis? Families have become refugees in their country. No matter matter our differences, show some understanding.
No matter where you come from, no matter your religion, we are one. Let's live together.
Nigeria, the only country we can train with remarkable potentials to excel. Let us believe in ourselves and change our attitude for the sake of our country and generations unborn. Let us revive our cultural values, which are our essence as a nation. Let us renew the spirit of patriotism and hope in our dear country. Do not take or give bribe. Be punctual always. No more African time. We can't expect to be global citizens and operate on African time. Join the queue. Insist that people are attended to on a first-come basis, no matter who they are or where they come from.
Nigeria, good people, great nation.
NTA Tuesday Live, a network issue-oriented innovation talk show.
Thanks for staying with us. We have Chinedu on the line from Enugu. Chinedu, if you're there, let's hear you. Oh, well, I think we lost that call from Chinedu. But recalling what Emmanuel said just before we took a break, the Enlightenment. The question would be, how enlightened are Nigerians about why or the benefits of taxation? Let's begin from Honorable.
Well, it was part of what I said when I was making my opening statement about giving education to Nigerians, let them understand the reasons why they have to pay tax, the advantages of paying tax, the benefits of paying tax.
It's been suggested that the elites are among the worst offenders who are not compliant at all, that you have a high level of compliance among those you wouldn't regard ordinarily as the elite. How do you respond to that?
I seem to agree to a certain extent about that. Naturally, every human being would like to stay away from certain things if he's not compelled to. And that is why we have the laws to compel people to a certain extent live up to their responsibilities. All the laws are there, and that is a call to action to the chairman and his team to begin to apply those laws and make sure that those who are supposed to pay tax, and that is why I was talking about bringing people on board and expanding the base, because those identification has been made is just for the necessary instruments to be applied to bring them on board and ensure that they live up to their responsibilities and pay adequate tax.
All right, let's go over to Maiduguri. We have Abba on the line from Maiduguri. Hello, Abba.
Good evening, sir.
Good evening.
Yes, my name is Abba Kinu, calling from Maiduguri. Mr. Chairman, good evening.
Hello, good evening.
Oh dear. That we lost that call too. But just try and keep the calls coming through. Sometimes the communication links can be this erratic, but we do believe that as we go on, we'll get in more calls and hopefully more opinions on the program. But using the base, the backbone of the law to bring in more people, you heard the Deputy Chairman of the House Committee on Finance. How have you done that so far?
Okay, well, what we have done so far, like you had mentioned earlier, maybe there's not enough information out there. We have started a massive campaign to let people understand the laws, let them also see the benefits and I believe you've run a few of these campaigns on your network. We also have translated the tax message into 5 major languages, Igbo, Hausa, Yoruba, English, and also Pidgin English. And I believe those are running right now on major radio stations. And basically, it's just to let them know of the importance and how to go about the payment of taxes. Now, after we have done this for the first quarter of the year, and we still see people are not willing to sign up, organizations are still being resistant, then of course we'll have to apply the laws, which will enforce them to sign up and to pay taxes.
Now, you've talked about the federal, the states, and the local governments, and one of the biggest complaints so far in the issue of taxation is what's been referred to as multiple taxation. You're taxed at one level, and then you find that at the next level, you're taxed as the same. And frankly, there are people who think that Nigerians are tax weary.
Well, let me try and correct that. We have taken that situation up at the Joint Tax Board level. And we did find out that there weren't cases of multiple taxation. We had cases of illegal charges. As a member of the Joint Tax Board and the chairman, all states chairmen have agreed that they would intervene on behalf of taxpayers. And I will request right now that any taxpayer who is being asked to pay a charge or a tax that does not seem reasonable or seems like a multiplicity of taxes should contact the state's chairman.
All right, because you can agree at your level, but you would have no way of knowing if this is put into practice. Really, you wouldn't have a monitoring mechanism, would you?
Well, we do. We do send people to monitor what's happening in various states. We have teams that go around the nation from the Joint Tax Board to find out what's going on. They talk to taxpayers. They also talk to the tax administrators.
Okay. We have a call coming through from Benin. Xavier, is it Fabian or Xavier, I guess?
Yeah.
Fabian. Right, go ahead, Fabian. Right, go ahead.
Yeah, Fabian from Benin. Yeah. Hello, good evening, sir. Sir, actually, for my own contribution, I still want to imagine. Can you hear me?
Yeah, yes, we can.
Because in situation whether you find when you find government, because I believe when it comes to taxation, it's supposed to be 10%. So a situation whereby government for instance, I'm a businessman. I work as a private businessman, and I'm supposed to pay a 10% to the government. And after paying that 10%, you find a situation whereby, like the current trend now, if I have to pay a money in the bank, I have to pay an additional 50 naira to the bank. So you imagine such situation. What do you want? What do you call that kind of 50 naira when you pay to the bank? It's another form of taxation. Because I believe based on where you want to tax people, it's a 10% taken from your entire, what you earn for that month. That's what it's supposed to be. But you collect that money, and again you want to collect extra money from this person is coming with other means, and it's the same taxation. You discover that even the government is never fair enough in such situations. Okay. So to me, I believe if we want to change this taxation, we should be sincere enough to the market. That is my own take on this.
All right. Thank you very much, Fabian. I do believe that he was talking about the 50 stamp duty charges. Stamp duty. That's a form of taxation. But let's put this to Professor in Kaduna. You heard the last caller talk about this and said this is an extra taxation. What are your views on it?
Yes, thank you very much. First of all, let me just apologize to the chairman for the figure I presented in terms of the cost implication. What I want us to try to factor in the cost of administrating taxes is the wage bill, the cost of maintaining facilities, the cost of handling movable and non-movable assets, and the rest of them. But I might have factored those things wrongly, and I want to tender apology for that. Then secondly, somebody made contribution from, the contributor from Lagos Center mentioned the lack of proper record keeping by SMEs, especially those in the informal sector and the rest of them and what have you. And this is what I mentioned earlier on, that we have to look at the supply angle and see how we can improve on that. That is, we can begin to have some programs, some training for people operating businesses to have proper record keeping and so on and so forth. That will help in improving the tax base. Now, this is a new addition. The stamp duty is a new addition in terms of tax, rates, duties, and levies on citizens of the country. Of course, we've been paying taxes in the capital market. In terms of when there is share transfer, you pay stamp duty and the rest of them. And also perhaps in the good market, property market, when you want to sign a document and all that. So the stamp duty is just a new introduction that has now gone into the money market that has not been there before. Or if I thought has been there, has not been fully operational, but except where a receipt is to be issued for money transaction and the rest. But the central bank, in its own wisdom, through its monetary administration, is trying to introduce that in the money market so that when there are transactions that maybe exceed 1,000 naira, then you pay 50 naira. That means on that 50 naira, maybe that is, if this amount is exactly 1,000, that means the person is paying about 5%. And so I think the masses of the country are looking at it from that angle that suppose the maximum income of that person in the bank is that about 1,000 naira, you're asking him to pay 5% again. So now he's now leaving home with 950 naira or something like that. And I think these are some of the issues that people have been raised. And I think the government can look into that, but so that those earning low income will not be adversely affected. But in any case, if you look at the projection, what the government is even expecting from the stamp duty is not all that much. Looking at the framework of the medium term expenditure, you see that within the next 3 years, we're just expecting to earn maybe about, maybe is it 60 billion or thereabout, or 70 billion in a year, and then the following year we have just some marginal increases. So I don't think that area will impact much in the revenue generation drive for the country, but at least it's a step in the right direction.
Very much. I will just return briefly to the tweets here, and this is coming from Adewale, and he says to the chairman FIRS, is it possible for a real estate company to charge 5% VAT on sales of properties? Okay, we'll just ask you to hold on to that before you answer. We have a Yusuf on the line from Zamfara. Hello, Yusuf. Yusuf, are you there?
Hello,
yes.
Good evening.
Good evening.
My contributions are simple and direct, and while I want to kind of thank Mommy Taxation right there. She has spoken well academically. However, I want to see in Nigeria virtually everything we get, we are able to use, we are able to see, and the beneficiaries, which basically are going to be the citizens, are able to feel it. Yeah, you've all said everything that is supposed to be said politically, academically, business-wise. But the fact still remains, what do you use the money you've gotten to do? The basic, typical Nigerian man wants to pay. We are not greedy. A typical Nigerian man is not a greedy person and is willing and always willing to pay this tax. I disagree with all of you as far as we don't want to pay tax is concerned. But the fact is, we have to entice the people to pay. We have to entice them to pay these taxes. Have you gone to Kano? Go to Kano, for instance, Kantinkwari. Do you know the kind of people you are going to get there? You want to increase your tax net, and you are not talking about seeing these informal people. If you go to Kano, I can assure you get millions of people you are going to add to your tax net. But the fact here is that try and use all the mediums. I'm a Muslim, and I actually know the stance of taxation in Islam. However, there wouldn't be anything wrong if the chairman of the task board is able to use the clerics, both Muslim clerics and Christian clerics, to find out the most interesting pattern they will use to entice the people to be able to see the fact that tax is a duty, is an assistance to the nation, not a do you must do, not making them see it as if it's
governor, and I'm sure that we'll have a roadshow to acquaint the people of Kano on the benefits of the payment of taxes. To the tweets that you received, on all goods and services, apart from those that are not VATable, VAT is expected to be paid. It's a transaction where monies are exchanging hands for property or for items, and the VAT rate is 5%.
Have you made any appreciable collection from property tax?
Well, there's some states have laws on property tax, which is different, and that's the prerogative of the states and the House of Assembly. In Lagos, we do have that tax.
Yes, you held sway in Lagos for a while. Yes. So avail us of that.
And I believe Edo State also has property tax, and a few other states. And this is a tax that is in most developed countries of the world. And basically, the government uses it to maintain the environment and make sure that all things that are required for homeowners or even people who are renting properties have a conducive environment.
Chief DK, in our Lagos studio, how well have the states done on the issue of management of tax administration? Because you see, we've been talking about what obtains for a while, I mean, considerably at the federal level. What about the states and the local governments? Because Professor also referred to the issue of people being taxed under different guises at different levels.
Thank you very much. Incidentally, I was the secretary to Professor Dr. Phillips' led study group on Nigeria tax system 2000 and 2003. And when we went around the country, a number of states had as many as 147. Of course, not all of them are taxes. You have taxes and also what people call levy. Of course, legally say levies are not taxes. But the truth of the matter is that as far as the individual is concerned, the pocket is leaking, whether you call it tax or you call it levy. And one of the major recommendations of Professor Dr. Phillips' report is that those multiple taxes, which are prevalent in virtually not just all the states or the federation, and it is still very much prevalent up to today, are nuisance taxes, and are indicators of fiscal indiscipline on the part of government. Because an individual, for instance, I always have illustrated it, and I have no apologies for religious beliefs, but I've said it if I go to church and I go with a fixed amount of money. And there are calls, altar call for contributions. Now, when you mention a particular item, then you start calling various groups. You call men, you call women, you call people from several states. If you are living in one state and you eat a product produced from that state, go and support them. But I have a definite and fixed amount of money in my pocket. So what happens? I'll be bringing out 1 naira so as to make sure that at least I attend to all those. And at the end of the day, you don't even collect as much. People rather, get disenchanted. They are not encouraged to come out. Why don't you reduce it to the minimal level so that people will be appealed to the conscience of the individuals and they will come out and be generous. You're going to collect much more. That is the nuisance of multiple taxes. And what is even more worrisome, in some states, some of these taxes are not collected by official revenue, accredited revenue agencies of the state. You now have tax contractors that have been engaged by most states to be collecting illegal levies. There are recent reports in some states of these Okada, these tricycle riders being killed because they paid the normal daily rates to one particular group of agents, but did not pay, and then the other one, when they now accosted another group, the other group insists that they must pay to them. And then a lot of these operators get killed. There are reports all over the place. And the states have not done very well in that regard. In spite of efforts that have been made, even before the current democratic dispensation in 1998, during the regime of General Abdul Salam Abubakar, when the promulgation of taxes and levies, approved list of collection, where you delineated what are the taxes and levies to be collected by the 3 tiers of government: federal, states, and local governments. In spite of efforts being made, some states, yes, they all come together under the umbrella of the Joint Tax Board. They all agree. But when they go back, the state chairmen, they may want to comply with what is agreed, but the political bosses don't agree. And so it is important that everybody, all the states, the governors, and all the political agents, all agree that we must, all of us, be fiscally disciplined and practice what we agree we should do. And unless and until we get serious in that regard, we cannot be moving forward. Let me say finally on this particular issue. In the epilogue of the study group report, Professor Batu Phillips said ultimately we are supposed to have only 2 types of taxes: income and expenditure. You should not balkanize the income into several parts. And if you look at the trajectory of tax rates over time, if from the mid-70s, corporate tax rate, for instance, was as high as 60%, but it has come down to 30%. There was a time in the mid-80s, the personal income tax rate, the top marginal rate for personal income tax was 70%. For every naira above 60,000 naira that individual earns. But it has come down to 24% for incomes in excess of 1.3 million. And what is the whole purpose? A gradual shift from direct to indirect taxation. It's easier to collect indirect tax, that's tax on consumption, because it's embedded in the goods and services we consume. And therefore, the direct tax rate burden should come down. I think we have to look at it very seriously as an issue, and finally the states and local governments must practice what they agreed to do in Abuja. Not agree one thing in Abuja and they go back and they close their eyes to the lot of recklessness that is going on in the name of revenue generation.
DK, thanks a lot. We're staying in Lagos for a while because we have David who's calling in from Lagos. I wonder if David's still on the line. No, I think David is gone off. But okay, but we will get the views of Prof from Kaduna on what we've just been talking about and how the states have been agreeing on one thing in Abuja and doing another thing when they go back home.
Yes, thank you very much. I think it depends on the policy frame of the governor of the state and what you want to achieve. For instance, we've talked about, getting some revenue from property sales, whether paying VAT or whatever it is. And I think the chairman, could not give a specific figure of what is going on in the state and all that. But I think to get that, what the state need to do is to improve on the database of the properties, the landed properties that they have in their state, as is being done in Abuja through the ages. And I think Kaduna here, where I am, the governor of the state, is working on building what they call the CAGIS, the Kaduna Geographical Information System, to capture every property and landed property in the state so that maybe for possible taxation, identification, and transfer, and also helping people to get easy title on their landed property. So that can help. And now with the step that the chairman of the Federal Inland Revenue is trying to take by making some consultation with the various governors of the state to know how to effectively collect these taxes, will also help so that he can also zero down on some of the issues that have been discussed at the joint board meeting that are not being implemented in some of these states. It will go a long way in making the state to identify that it is in their own interest to increase their tax base, to also implement some of the policy. But the challenges there is that, especially those of us operating from the north here, some of those issues to implement and get taxes, especially on properties, is very, very difficult because of the so-called big man syndrome. And it takes a lot of guts by chief executive of the state to ensure that appropriate taxes are paid as regards properties and all that. So it's very, very difficult and challenging. But I know that with the political will, by various state government, they can discuss with their state tax board and see how those areas that are lacking and those challenges that they're facing in terms of collecting those taxes in the state and how it can be improved. So I think that with that, we have a very good tax system and tax generation drive across the state.
All right, thank you. And from the tweets, once again, Mohammed Sani has tweeted in, and we'll just ask our guest to respond to this. He says, if FIRS can generate and collect 4.9 trillion naira, then why do we have over 2 trillion naira budget deficit, and why is the government borrowing over 2 trillion naira? Maybe you'd like to comment on that, Dr. Shumari.
On that point, that whether government, why government needs to borrow.
Yes.
In addition to that, I think that should be taken by the Honorable of the National Assembly. He should be able to tell us.
Or maybe well, we'll come to him because we're not done with the issue of executives, state executives influencing how the tax boards of the states, carry out whatever agreements they have reached at the joint tax board. So we are still saving that for him because that's the issue of politicians, really.
Because from the point of view of the Federal Revenue,
because maybe they are thinking that what they say is not being going drugs to government.
Ali, is that
so
it?
You people, you have to ensure that whoever pay his tax, maybe there is number you be giving.
I think what he's
All
trying
right.
to say is that there's no accountability. That
Okay.
people are not sure that when they pay, the money goes directly to government. I think, or let me try and put it this way. The states have a certain independence when it comes to revenue generation. And so there can't be a law that will compel every state to make sure that all taxpayers pay directly to the bank. At the local government level, like someone had said, there's some of them engage consultants to collect revenue, which is wrong. But like I said, politically, the federal government has certain limitations. The states and local governments have their own autonomy. So there's not very much that can be done.
Also, at the Federal Capital Territory, there is a proposal to also introduce property tax. But all these new taxes, they are not in the harmonized list of 2015. So a lot of members of the Chartered List of Taxation are wondering that if government has decided that these are the taxes, levies, charges that are supposed to be collected, you have not even given that law a chance to be implemented, and government is bringing additional taxes or trying to increase rate of taxes, as the issue of VAT, which I support. I support that VAT should be increased. Yes, I support that one. The proposal has been on the drawing board.
Yes, but the question has been, how well have you done with collection of 5% VAT? And would an increase be the solution, or
question of
collecting adequately what you have in place now?
The question of how well what you have done with the collection, that is not for Federal Revenue Service. Federal Revenue Service has done very well to bring in a lot of revenue through the introduction of the value-added tax. In fact, in the first year of its implementation, because I happened to be the secretary to the study group that brought in the issue of value-added tax, the projection was about 1.2 or so. At the end of the day, in the first year of value-added tax, Federal Revenue Service generated 6.2 billion. So Federal Revenue Service has done very well. So the question is, how well? What have you done with the value-added tax? The National Assembly, let them say something. What have they done? But in terms of generation of revenue from value-added tax, the executive chairman of Federal Revenue Service has said to us this evening that they're able to, rake in 4.9, which means value-added tax on its own is doing very well. VAT is not the issue. The issue is what we have applied all the taxes to. Then on the harmonization, that's the key issue, that government should give the harmonized taxes a chance, rather than bringing additional taxes shortly after the introduction of the harmonized taxes.
Okay, right. Well, Honorable.
Well, going exactly from what Madam said about what have we done about the National Assembly does not hold the coffers of the nation. We only appropriate what is available for us to use to implement the budget and then run government. However, it is important for us to note that what FIRS said they are going to rake in is a projection they have made in the budget. That money is not there yet. It's a projection, what they're expecting to get.
They may hit the target, they may not.
They may hit it, they may not. And that is why it is important, for us to ensure that all other areas that you need to get money to shock the budget, to make sure that you implement the budget, you utilize those areas. So if at the end of the day, by half of the year, FIRS gives Nigeria 6 trillion naira, so be it, and we'll be all happy with it. And I don't think Nigeria will borrow to finance the budget if we can meet up to that.
All right, Dr. Shumarin raised something about the concerns of the Institute of Taxation about new taxes coming up. And I particularly am interested in this one about the education tax. And I want Prof to a comment on this, where the 2% of, I think it's 2% of accessible profit is imposed on all companies to improve education. Now, Prof, what are your views on that?
Thank you very much. Let me also, add to the contribution to the National Assembly, especially the question that was asked that what is the National Assembly doing because of the taxes that people are paying? They don't see the result on ground and all that. And I think the oversight function of the National Assembly should be kind of giving some form of impetus. And this is where the National Assembly will come in. As people are paying their taxes, government is generating revenue, and they are not seeing the commensurate impact on the economy. So the National Assembly will, begin their oversight function from there and find out that, okay, if this aspect of the economy, this amount was budgeted for, was it actually utilized? Did they have impact on the masses of the nation? All that. I think that's an area that the National Assembly should be very, very effective, especially on their oversight function. In terms of education tax fund, well, in fact, I can say that those of us in the university have seen the impact, especially from TED fund, the various interventions they've been given, and a lot has done in various government-owned universities, like the federal and the state. The TED fund has done very well in terms of the revenue being generated from the education tax fund that is being paid. For instance, a lot of Nigerians have been sponsored abroad to acquire additional qualification. For instance, within the last 5, 6, 7 years, we've had a significant improvement in the number of people with PhD degrees. And some of them were being sponsored by the TED fund through the education tax. And also, some facilities, some projects are currently ongoing. A number of them has been completed through that same means. Not only that, capacity building for existing lecturers, staff of the various universities and higher institutions of learning, they've received a lot of boost by the education tax fund. Now, if they are planning to increase the education tax fund, as I said, it's not just mere increase, because we should look at the impact all this will have on the organization that are paying these taxes. And I think the ones we have collected so far, if we make use of them and utilize them further, I think the economy will be better for it. But having said that, those of us in the university, if we have more money coming from education tax funds, will be happy. Because the education tax, is a creation of the academic staff union of university some years ago. And because the government was crying that how would they fund education, especially tertiary education in the country. And those ideas were mooted by ASU, and the government by it, and it has been very good. Then it was called Education Trust Fund, and later separated to have the Tertiary Education Trust Fund. It has been doing very well. So if the National Assembly and the relevant agency of government want to increase it, I think we welcome that. We need it very, very much well. Thank you.
I thought you would, but we have another call from Oyo, I believe. Yes. Shola calling in from Oyo.
Hello?
Hello, Shola. Go ahead.
Hello?
Hello.
Hello?
Yes, go ahead.
Hello?
We can hear you.
Hello?
Oh, dear.
Hello?
Oh, dear. Shola, we can hear you. Just
Hello?
go ahead.
Can you hear me?
Yes, we can. Go ahead.
You can hear me?
Yes.
Can you hear me? Yes. My own contribution is not much. But the little contribution that I have is that Nigeria people are not very hard to control. But the main point is that yes, if they generate all these tax from the people of Nigeria, where is the money going to be directed? if you see all these, the people, even though these are politicians, we vote from people, you understand. Within a couple of some time, you see them having some houses, building from in that mansion in our environment. And if just a taxpayer comes to me and he said that I should be paying tax or whatever, the first of all is that I'm going to ask him that all these people that you understand what I wanted to mean out there. So people of Nigeria are not, they are ready to do what government wanted to do, what them to do. But where is this money is going to be diverted to? You know, if you want me to be paying something, and then I don't know where the money is going to be channeled to. That is the simple problem about it. We are ready to do whatever the government wants us to do. You see the government changing from fuel price. People are abiding. We are going to go to the police station and buy it. Are you getting me? We are not very hard to control. But the government are the one that are doing Nigeria people bad. So that is my own contribution. We are not so very, we are good citizens. Are you getting me? That is Nigeria. So that's
right.
what I wanted to...
Okay. Thank you very much. And what you've just talked about ties in with a tweet we got from Emmanuel. He says, let's begin to fix things in our country, and citizens will also embrace taxation. That seems to be the recurring question. What happens to what you have collected so far? And this is repeated over and over again.
Unfortunately.
Right.
Unfortunately, no tax authority has any control
over what is done.
Over what is done.
Just to collect the tax.
You know, different ministries or agencies, they have their responsibilities and roles. So it's not written anywhere that the FRS can control what is collected. Their own function is to assess, collect, account for what you collect. Where you are not able to collect, enforce. That's where it stops. We've not been given that mandate on how that money is spent. It's another agency.
Well, as we begin to round off, perhaps these are issues people have asked us to raise with the chairman of the FIRS, so that they can be enlightened on who is exempted from paying tax, and particularly reference for even those who pay tax, those with small incomes, and also to respond to the allegation that the big multinationals and the big businesses don't pay nearly as much tax as they should, while for other categories, well.
Okay, let me first of all try and respond to one pending issue, and that was brought up by Mr. DK, based on user charges and other levies that are being charged at the state level. This issue was brought up, and we did find out that some of these tricycle owners, wheelbarrow pushers, downfall drivers, they actually form associations, and they agree to pay certain charges or dues to those associations. So they're not taxes. So that sort of ties the hands of the State Board of Internal Revenue. If you agree voluntarily to be a member of an association and they decide to charge you X amounts, I mean, it's not a tax. So government is sort of limited in interfering in what they went in of their own accord. Now, to go to some of the questions, if you're retired, you're a pensioner, you're not earning any additional income, you don't pay tax. But if you're a pensioner and you have shares, for example, and you get dividends on your shares, of course, tax will be deducted. Or you're retired, you're a pensioner, you've got property, and you rent out that property, and you make additional income, you'll pay tax on that. And if you also don't earn any income, you don't pay any tax. So you can get a tax certificate with zero income on it.
And again, we ask this question because what does the law says regarding charities? And yes.
Yeah, I wanted to chip in on the issue of exemption of taxes. Yes. You know, the exemption of taxes are based on statute. You have to take them tax law by tax law. If you are looking at exemption under the Personal Income Tax Act, Cap P13 LFN 2004, which was amended in 2011, you go to the third schedule. In the third schedule, you have incomes exempted. For example, prior to the amendment in 2011, the president of Nigeria, the vice president of Nigeria, the governors and the deputy governors, their income were exempted from payment of taxes until the amendment in 2011. Right. So if you want to see all those exempted, just go to third schedule of that law. Then as for Companies Income Tax Act, you go to Section 23 of Companies Income Tax Act, Cap C21, LFN 2004. You will see those exempted there. For the Value Added Tax Act, which is Cap V1, LFN 2004, for those amended in 2007, for the goods and services exempted, go to the law. You have to treat the exemptions.
Okay, yeah. So, someone once suggested that, well...
But on charity, maybe
for those, someone once suggested that for those who, before the reforms, before it was amended, those who enjoyed that exemption, who were holding high offices, should be made to pay those taxes in arrears. Because the small guys paid and the big guys didn't pay.
Yeah, there's been this issue of tax waivers, which has made some people wonder why some people should be allowed to go away from paying tax, and exactly what we are talking about. Okay. But the National Assembly has found out that, and we have set up inquiries to find out why such a thing should happen, and why some people should be given waivers. Because if you're going to give waivers, it should be across board, and in equity and fairness.
And then, and then as we run out of time, the issue of that's still pending. Charities, religious organizations and bodies. What does the law say about that?
Now, the Constitution gives a waiver of taxes to religious organizations. However, some of them are engaged in commercial activities. They float schools, they sell books.
They rake in huge profits.
Yes, well, based on that, they do pay taxes on those transactions. We had an extensive discussion with them when I was chairman of Lagos State Board of Internal Revenue, and I can tell you that they all agreed to pay taxes, and they have been paying taxes in Lagos. And I believe that they're also paying taxes on commercial activities in other states.
When they're so disclosed, that is. Well, okay, as we prepare to round up, let's get the last one in from Chief DK in Lagos.
I think it has been quite an interesting conversation we've had this evening. What is critical is that for issue about exemptions, like the president of CITN, Dr. Shomari, said, it's a constitutional responsibility of every citizen to pay tax who earns an income. And that was why I remember during the last study group, Professor Dr. Phillips, there was an attempt that was made to exempt people below a particular threshold of income from paying tax. But when that constitutional point was made, that every citizen who earns an income must pay tax, and that brought in the issue about 1%, minimum tax, which no matter if your tax-free income is, in excess of your earned income, you must pay 1% of that earned income as your tax, because that will give you a voice as a citizen of that country.
Right, and it is on that note we'll leave this conversation. Some other time we'll revisit the issue of taxation. So I'd like to say a big thank you to all our guests. We'll say thank you to Chief Mark Anthony Dike, immediate past president of the Chartered Institute of Taxation. He joined us from our Lagos studio. Thank you very much for your contribution to this program tonight, Chief Dike. Thank you. Thank you. Thank you to Professor Seth Akusen of the Department of Economics, Kaduna State University, who joined us from our Kaduna studio. Thank you for your time and your thoughts on this program. Thank you.
Thank you very much.
And to the chairman of the Federal Inland Revenue Service, FIRS, Mr. William Babatunde Fowler. We appreciate your coming.
Thank you very much.
Also, thanks to Dr. Teju Shomori, president of the Chartered Institute of Taxation. Thank you.
Thank you, Sarah.
And Honorable Austin Chukwukere, Deputy Chairman, House of Representatives Committee on Finance. We thank you for your presence.
Thank you, sir.
And to all of you who joined in on this program, we say thank you. Next week, we'll reach you again on NTA